Now, the National Security Committee of Cabinet met in Canberra here yesterday to finalise details of this planned rescue of 16 women and 42 children from those camps in northeastern Syria. The group are widows and children of Australian terrorists who went overseas to fight for ISIS or Islamic State. Now, there are serious concerns, of course, about the rehabilitation and the ability of these people to reintegrate back into our society. Here's what the opposition leader Peter Dutton told me on the show last night.
What we have to do is what is in our country's best interest, not just those children who, I mean, it breaks your heart to see kids in that environment, either born into that environment or dragged by their parents irresponsibly into a theatre of war. And we have a responsibility to Australian citizens, I accept that. But the resources that are required by Australian Federal Police and by ASIO to monitor somebody 24/7, I mean, you're talking literally millions of dollars each year on each individual case.
Let's bring in our regular expert child and adolescent psychologist, Clare Rowe, who joins me from Sydney. Good to talk to you again, Clare. We read today that these women and children are likely to go into custody when they first arrive here, while legal matters and control orders, possibly charges, are laid. What do you see as the real risks here for the adults and for the children in terms of integrating back into society?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's a very complex and difficult issue, and I think the children really are at the centre of this, because I think if you ask most Australians, and most Australians are pretty good at the pub test, I think really they have their doubts about some of these wives and women who are saying, of course, that they were forced to flee to Syria to fight with their husbands. But most Australians can't bear the thought of some of these children staying in these camps. It's my understanding there's about 40 of them that are eligible for repatriation under this policy, and most of those are under 6 years old. But when we talk about risks, I mean, as a developmental expert, I know that most of your worldviews and your core values and your, developmental processes that are extremely important in the brain occur in the first few years of life. And these children have been brought up in a very dangerous bubble. I mean, the reports coming out of these camps is that Islamic State is rife. There are, frequent murders. There's, of course, poor food, water, no education, no healthcare, and it breaks your heart, as Peter Dutton said, to hear of children who are eligible for Australian citizenship. However, these children, as I said, have been brought up in this bubble, and it will need to be a very sophisticated, thought-out process of how we reintegrate them back into Australian life. My fear is that this is an impulsive kind of humanitarian move, which I think we should do for these children, but I think we need to have a plan, not just for the next 12 months, but for the next 5 or 10 years of their life. And the other thing to consider, Chris, is that if we're going to do it, I do think we should do it now, given that these children are, most of them, under 6 years old. It would be a different matter if we were looking at reintegrating, rehabilitating children aged 13, 14, 15. The chances of doing that are quite slim, obviously just based on the time that they've spent in that bubble. But I think, we do have world experts in Australia, world terrorism experts, child psychology, psychiatry, paediatricians need to come together as a highly specialised team to look at these individual cases.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area. It's the old Jesuit maxim, isn't it? Give me the child till they are 7 and I'll show you the adult. But just very briefly, their extended families back here in Australia will be crucial in all of that, won't they?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, of key is obviously social integration. We need long-term monitoring. They'll need to be supported by their Australian families here, and we're talking social activities, the education system, and actually extensive support for the mothers that come with them, because they will be key in the messages that they deliver their child in the importance of reintegrating and rehabilitating into an Australian way of life. And all those opportunities need to be provided to those families.
Yeah, great insights there, Clare. Thanks so much for joining us. It's going to be a really difficult project, and a lot of good hands and good minds and good hearts are going to need to be involved. That is Clare Rowe, who is an adolescent and child psychologist.